All right, so Larry with MotorGuide Pro Team, Fishermen Outdoors, Mercury Pro Team. Just rigging an Xi3 here on Mr. Jordan's boat. Just want to go over a couple of things with you guys from a rigging standpoint. We get a lot of questions on rigging these. So one thing you got to look at when you're rigging is where your rub rail comes down right here. There's a lock-in. There's a clearance. You need to make sure that when the Xi3 or Xi5 gets deployed, that you have enough clearance for your shaft down here. So your transmission assembly is going to rotate down, is going to lock in, and you got to make sure that that shaft clears. So what I advise to do is lay it out like what we did here. Kind of, you're going to get it where you want it, and then you'll mark your holes, and then you'll drill them. The nice thing with the Xi3 is that the mount holes are all pretty much laid out real easy to access. The Xi5, they're a little bit different because the decket plates are different, and on here the decket panels, which we'll get to later, and when we put it back together, just kind of slide in and they lock in with one bolt. So when we do this, what I always like to do, lay this out, and then we'll push the pedal. Go ahead and push that, Jordan. And then we're going to kind of partially deploy this trolling motor. So you're going to slide your lock collar back. You want to just tighten that up right about there. So I always leave that lock collar there. And then we're going to slide this out. So we got the trolling motor. It clears. So right there we know when it locks in, we got good clearance on the shaft. If you look underneath, right there, so we got that couple, 2-3 inches of clearance. Yes, it does stick out over the top of the boat. That's the way that they're designed with that. So just a quick tip, when you're doing this, makes life a little bit easier. Lay it out before you drill your holes. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to get this drilled in, we're going to mount it, and then we're also going to be running this with a NEMA network, and we're going to cover that today as well too. So here we go. We're going to be linking this with an HDS 5, and we're putting an Elite 9 Ti on the dash. So what we're going to do here is we're going to be running the gateway to link the unit. So basically, gateway, NEMA, right? Okay. You have to terminate both ends of the network. So what I like to do is try to lay out my network first. So I have my network cord here. This is going to be my 15-foot cord. That's going to run from the helm all the way up. And then that's going to go into a T connector. Off of that T connector, we're running the trolling motor gateway. And then we're terminating that end of the gateway. And then down the line, if we want to splice in the HDS, we just add a T and add another link cable in for that. So that would be easy to do. Then from here, we're going to run our cable up. We're going to run our power cord, another T, and then we have a short adapter cable that's going to run up to this short adapter cable here. Will run up into the TI, and that will link that so that everything comes together with the to use with the MotorGuide unit. So that's one way as far as linking those together on that end. So when it's all done, we'll show you what we did. Okay, so we got everything pretty much set up now. Now we're into the Lowrance. The MotorGuide's working as far as that goes. So one thing, NEMA's run, power's run, you want to make sure clean power source. In this case, we're hooked up to a power source hub under the dash with a switch, so we can toggle NEMA on and off as we need to, which is great. So from this particular here, right now, what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through the initial setup. This has to be done on not every time, but on your initial setup of either your Xi3 or your Xi5. Here we have an Xi3. So we're going to go into settings. You're going to go into network. You're going to hit auto config. You're going to get this pop-up. You select yes. Now we've configured everything to the system. Next, we're going to go into our device list and we're going to look. On here, we should see 4 MotorGuide things. They're laid out by MTGD. So we see a compass, GPS, rudder feedback, trolling gateway. Perfect. Everything's where it should be. We're good. Exit out of that screen. Now we're going to go into our diagnostics. This is our NEMA bus state. Okay, so we want to look at our NEMA bus state on here. We should see no overruns, no overflows, no errors, no fast packet errors. Our bus load will fluctuate. Guys, if you're using a 0.1 puck, you'll see a higher bus load on your bus. If you have more graphs hooked up, in this case, we just have the Elite 9 hooked up in our NEMA network right now. Our bus load's around 5%, fluctuates up. The more devices you put on your NEMA, the higher your bus load. The big thing is no error messages. All right, we're going to exit out of that screen. Now, you're going to go into data sources. GPS, all data global. You'll see here that this is defaulted to the Elite 9 iGPS. When you use your MotorGuide, you need to default this to your MotorGuide GPS. Again, guys that are using 0.1, you need to select the MotorGuide GPS because wherever your 0.1 is, that's where it's taking the GPS reading. If we're doing heading lock, if we're doing cruise control, if we're doing anchor lock, you want it to use the GPS modules in the head and the lower unit of the MotorGuide, in the base and the head, for your most accurate reading. If you don't, wherever that GPS reading is where it's going to want to anchor, and you're never going to be able to hold there. Okay, so default that, exit out of that screen. Okay, now we're going to go, and this is the one that a lot of guys get screwed up. Autopilot, we should see here where we have arrival mode. This tells you when you arrive to a waypoint, you say navigate to waypoint 2, whatever it is, what's it going to do after it arrives to that waypoint. In here, right now it's set to heading lock, which means when we get to that waypoint, it's going to continue in a heading lock, okay? We don't want hide autopilot bar. We're going to switch that to off because we want the autopilot bar to come on. And then we should be good on that set. So once we get that done, we can go in here and you can see here we already have a screen created, which we did, and I'll show you how I did that with autopilot. So my autopilot screen, I'm going to grab autopilot, grab a new panel, autopilot, grab that out there. I want my charts, I want my sonar, and I'm going to drop that in there. I'm going to save that setup, and there we go. That's our setup, right? So from there, then I can do whatever. So if I'm in anchor mode, I want to anchor, I hit anchor, it will say here, and then you can see now we're not really doing anything, but the Xi3 is searching. It's going to look and it's going to try to anchor. In this case, I'm going to stop it because we're hitting the boat. It will try to get the GPS coordinates of where you are and go from there. But you have to go through that initial setup, and then you'll see your trolling bar up there, and I shut the prop off and we're good to go on that end. So that's your basic installation on anything there for your Lowrance and your Xi5 and Xi3. Boys, get over here.